you tired of living on autopilot? Are you ready to start embracing your one precious life? Welcome to the Wake Up to Your Life podcast. I'm your host, Colleen Odegaard. Hi. Hello there. Welcome to the show. If you're listening for the first time, what took you so long? No, I'm just kidding. I'm so glad that you're here. Otherwise, I'd just be talking to myself, and what fun would that be? I'm glad that you're tuning in to the Wake Up to Your Life podcast. This episode is for any parent who has ever been caught in one of those kid comparison conversations. You know what I'm referring to. It starts when they're little itty bitty babies. Oh, is he sleeping through the night? Yeah, my baby's been sleeping through the night, since she was 2 weeks old for 9 hours straight. Oh, she's not walking yet. Our son is jumping hurdles and he's 9 months old. And this goes on until the point the kids are in high school, like my kids are. I have a junior and a senior in high school. My child is taking 7 AP courses. He's really driven. How many is yours taking? None? Well, there's nothing wrong with community college. Which, by the way, community college is a great option. When these kid comparisons happen, it is so easy to question your parenting ability. And even more than that, if we aren't self-aware as moms and dads, it's easy to transfer those feelings of not good enough to our children. My guest today has some great reminders for all of us. Beatrice Moyes is a parenting coach and a board-certified cognitive specialist. She works with parents to help them understand who their children really are and what they're capable of doing. And Bea is a mom to 7-year-old Abby, who has ADHD, and 9-year-old Jake, who has autism. I asked Bea for some thoughts on this keeping up with the Joneses mentality in parenting.
All the time. Yeah, this is something that I see all the time across the board from everyone, all income levels, all demographic, all races. It really doesn't matter. All parents do this. And for the majority of us who don't want to do this, sometimes we feel compelled to do it anyway because the pressure, again, the peer pressure of having to conform.
So let's talk about that. When we as parents feel that pressure, what is that doing to our children?
Well, when you're feeling the pressure to maintain or do something, you're giving off the signal, like you're telling your child they're not good enough. Who they are, it's not good enough. Who you are, it's not good enough. Like you're consistently giving this negative message that they need to do more and be more than they actually are, or what they're capable of doing. So you're giving this bad vibe, bad message that, hey, you're not enough and you need to do these extra things to be enough, or at least get close to it.
And I think this is something that happens no matter the age of your kid.
Absolutely.
It starts when they're itty bitty babies. And, my children are teenagers. They're going to go to college soon within the next year and 2 years. And it's still happening. And I think it happens even when they're in college and out of college.
It doesn't ever truly stop. I mean, that's a perfect example. So when you think about it from infancy stage, new parents tend to do a comparison of, well, my child is now lifting their head. Was your child lifting their head? And I remember for my first child, Jake, when he was itty bitty, he did not lift his head. I mean, I don't know, his head was just too big anyway. But I remember my friends' babies like lifting up their head and Jake did not. And I'm like, whoa. Why isn't he moving his head the way this other child is doing it? So again, that's infancy. And as they get older, we start talking about preschool and what are they doing? What are they learning? My child can sing the ABC songs backwards or forward. Can yours? And you're like, well, no, they're like digging up their nose. Like that's where my child is at right now. So again, and it keeps going and it keeps going. And then of course there's sports and athletics when they get into that age where we don't allow kids to really just enjoy the act of playing the sport and just being in the moment and enjoying what they're doing, where it's like, well, we need to give you a competitive edge. Like we all have these pre-professional pro athletes in our hand, and it's like, no, you do not. You just have a kid who likes to play with the ball and like to be thrown around and just kind of like just to be a kid. And then you go through that high school age of now the external pressure of where are they going to college? You know, have they applied? Have they taken the SATs yet? Are you seeing this college's admission person? And so then again, the competition doesn't end. And you would think you'd get a breather. Finally, they're in college, it's done. But for parents, because again, I parent throughout the ages, for parents with adult children, when are they going to get married? You know, like this child's person is married. When are you going to get married? You know, you did the college thing or you did the grad school thing. Now it's time to get married. And when you get married, and this I personally remember feeling, my husband and I, we were together 8 years before having children. It was, well, when are you going to have kids? Yeah. So it's this cycle that doesn't ever really truly end of when are you going to do this because someone else has already done it or is doing it.
Someone else's kids are doing it. This is what this kid is doing. Mm-hmm. And it's real. And I think it makes parents feel so bad about themselves at times. So again, it's not great for our kids,
right? Because
they're getting the message that somehow what they are, who they are, what they're doing is not good enough.
Right. They're less than. That's the message you're consistently sending out when that's not really what you want to do as a parent. And that's not the intention behind it at all. But that's the message they're getting.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say to parents who feel that pressure in a very real way? And, you know, we all know this. Mm-hmm. We all have experienced this. I remember, you know, you talk about your son when he was a baby and not lifting his head. I had a neighbor at the time, and I remember everything her kid did was just groundbreaking.
Parents, specifically moms, feeling like a failure, just feeling like I am not doing the job that I should be doing because my child is still playing with the 2-year-old toy when they're 5, or my child is still not potty trained when they should be. And my child is not walking when everyone else is walking. And we take that as a personal hit, and we take it as, you know, a failure on our parenting skill, our mothering skill, when in actuality, it's about where that child is. And it's about, you know, where that child developmental stage, where they're at cognitively at that time. There's a lot of things that some kids will do early, and then there's some kids that will do some things extremely late, but it doesn't mean that they're not thriving, you know, like in their world, in their aspect. So if we shift that focus into, you know what, my child's not doing this, even though this one is, that's okay, because my child is going to do something different anyway. And they're going to keep hitting milestones at the developmental stage that they're ready to do it, not at my pace. So that's really the message we're sending to kids is if you're not performing this, if you're not doing this in comparison to this other child, or even to who I was as a younger version, you know, like as a younger person, you're failing. And that's the message comparison sends. It's you're a failure. You're a failure as a child. You're a failure as a person. You're a failure as a human being because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing at this timeline that we've created. And it's not true.
Yeah. It's not true.
It's not true.
You believe, you have this philosophy, and you believe in meeting children where they are.
Absolutely.
Can you explain more what you mean by that and share a little bit about your personal story?
Yeah. So I am a firm believer in, you know, meeting children where they're at as opposed to where you want them to be. And my greatest inspiration, obviously, I talk about my son, Jake, all the time, who's autistic. And it's, you know, Jake has been the inspiration behind, I'm going to do something when I'm ready to do it. I'm not going to do it at your pace, at your level, at, you know, whenever the time frame you have done, it's going to be up to me. And for me, I'm an A-type personality. You know, I'm like, I'm going to do this at this age. I'm going to do this at this age. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get married, blah, 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 blah. And I've had what I thought was perceived control of my life choices. Mm-hmm. And when you get a child on the spectrum, you no longer have that luxury, and you are truly given two options. You can fully accept what you've been given, or you can fight it. But it doesn't matter. You know, fully accepting it is really the only option that there is. So I accept him for who he is, where he is at, what he is doing. And I allow him to lead me into where are we going next? what are we doing next? I don't force things that does not necessarily need to be forced, because especially when you have a child with special needs, there's a lot of things that you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, early intervention, that's something different. Those are therapeutic things. That's different. But I don't need to make him do things at the rate that his cohorts are doing it. Because guess what? He will eventually. And that eventually could be at 10. It could be at 15. It could be at 17. I have no clue. But eventually it will happen if it's meant to happen, because you can't force anyone to do something that they're not ready to do. So that's really my philosophy on meeting your child where they're at. If they were meant to do this thing, they will do it. If it wasn't meant to be, it won't happen. No matter how much you force it, it just won't.
How do you help parents get into that mindset? Because I think it is so easy to say, okay, I'm just going to meet my child where he or she is. You can say it all the day long. And then when your neighbor's kid is, getting baseball scholarships or is the star athlete at the school or the valedictorian or, whatever the case might be. And then you're thinking, well, why can't you be more like that? And why don't we get you a tutor? And why don't we put you in more after school activities? And why don't we do this? And then we start to let it in and it starts to happen. So how can parents kind of get there?
It's acceptance. Honestly and truly, it's really accepting A, your child, but B, yourself, because a lot of the times what we're seeing is a failure on our younger selves. So when you're parenting your child, you have to say, who am I parenting right now? Mm-hmm. Am I parenting a younger version of me or am I parenting my child? And that creates a different conversation, an internal dialogue that you can have with yourself. It's very easy for me to push my daughter because she does have personality more similar to myself. Mm-hmm. So when she's doing something, I'm like, yeah, little Beatrice would love that. Yeah, do that. And then Abby will sit there and tell me, I don't want to do that because I am me. And her favorite thing to tell me is, Mommy, we all have our different personalities.
Smart girl.
Yes. And she tells me that all the time just to kind of remind me of, yes, even though we're similar, she is still her own person. Yeah. So acceptance is really the biggest key. And really to think about, who are you parenting right now? Are you parenting the younger version of you? Or are you parenting the child that you actually have in front of you, which is now a combination of you, your spouse, environment, changes, like all these different factors that, you can't duplicate your childhood. Mm-hmm. You've moved, you relocated, you've had education, you have different parenting techniques and styles. So you're really not parenting you. You're parenting a different version of that. And you have to make, proper adjustments.
That's so good. And that requires some real self-awareness on mom and dad's part.
Yes, it does. There's a lot of intentional thoughts that has to go into being not a perfect parent. There's no such thing, but to be a good parent, you have to be very intentional with your actions, your thoughts, your behavior. It's time consuming, really. And at the end of the day, you're like, I can't be intentional anymore. We're
turn on the TV and the computer.
We're watching TV and having ice cream all day. Like that's all we're doing. Because it's mentally and physically draining, but you have better kids because of it. And you'll start to see they're okay with who they are. I mean, a lot of adults, when do we become who we are? We start to think about, man, it was like in my 30s, I started to be comfortable in my skin. Imagine gifting that to your child at 8 or 7 or 5 or 13 or 20. Imagine the gift of, this is who you are. These are your skills. These are your deficits. This is what you can do. And here you go. Instead of waiting 30 years to come into that mode, to come into that acceptance. So for me, when I tell parents, I'm like, you are gifting your child something that you did not gain later in life, like way later when you thought, man, I knew who I was when I was 15, but I was fighting it. Because I didn't think that the world would accept it. My parents didn't accept it. Bobby down the street didn't accept it because he was just killing it in sports, whatever it may be. So just think about it as a gift. to your child that they would get later on. But then at that point, you're like, it's too late, you know,
it's
but
a
you
beautiful gift. It's a beautiful gift. And that's what makes children feel confident and go out and become more of who they are.
Absolutely.
And go out and change the world.
That's exactly. And if that's who they're meant to be, I mean, if they're meant to change the world, they will. If they're meant to, you know, just be a regular person, they will. Just the idea of full acceptance, you know, it's a great thing. I have an autistic child. I'm like, you know what, Jake? You're autistic, you're on the spectrum. That is who you are. It is part of your identity. It is not your whole definition of you. It's not Jacob with autism, but it is a part of who you are. And we allow him to be autistically, you know, awesome, just, you know, in who he is. And again, I'm just trying to gift my children something that I didn't get. And something I know a lot of parents did not receive. So that's my message. Just give them that gift.
I know. I think most of us didn't receive it, really.
Right.
I think most of us didn't receive it. And that's why we're now pushing our kids. What do you say, though, to parents who would say, well, you know, I mean, it's competitive out there and I'm just trying to give my kid an edge. I'm trying to make sure my kid has the best future he or she can have. That's why I'm putting my kids in all these extracurricular activities. That's why I'm making them learn how to speak Mandarin Chinese. That's why they're taking this many AP classes in high school. What do you say to those people?
And you know what? Those are very valid points because it's become so competitive where you sometimes don't feel like you have the option, like you have to do it. I say, does it align with your child's vision of themselves? You know, if there's no alignment, you're pushing something that ultimately will not benefit them anyway. You know, like I know a lot of kids who did things at, you know, very high collegiate level and still ended up, you know, working their 9 to 5 in just a regular job because that wasn't who they were. It did not align with who intrinsically they are. So especially when we start to push, we can have a conversation, you know, like you can have a conversation with your 11-year-old, your 12-year-old, your 13-year-old. And for high schoolers and up, you definitely can have a conversation of, is this something you want to pursue? If the child is hesitant, I would say, okay, let's do this for one more year and decide. Like if the child is like, well, I don't know, I really like it, I have friends, you know, that means they're unsure, they're uncertain with it. So you can say, okay, let's do it another year. If the child is like, I just really want to have a year to relax, I just want to do this, that is not who they are because the best athletes never give up. You know, like they just keep going and they don't necessarily need that push. If you're finding that you're pushing too hard, it's no longer that child's dream. It's your dream. It's your goal. It's your hope. It's your aspiration for them. So really, if it doesn't align with who they are and what they want to do, let them be a kid. Childhood is so short. I mean, 18 years is not enough. And you have to be an adult, you know, this very long period of time. Let them enjoy being kids.
Yeah. You just have to have your kids back.
Right.
Whoever they are and not, you know, some parents are concerned about popularity. Why aren't you going out? Why aren't you going to that party? Did Tommy invite you to his party? Why aren't you going to Tommy's party? Did you want to invite Tommy over here? We do weird things because if we know the family down the street, they've got their kids doing X, Y, and Z, or, you know, they've got a ton of friends. How come you don't have any friends? As parents, we think we're just asking these benign questions, but we're not. You know, your kids pick up on a weird line of interrogation.
Right. You're putting on a pressure for them to be something that they may not. I mean, in all honesty, think about it. I know I have 2 close friends from high school. I had a lot in high school as friends, but right now I'm down to 2. So just think about, you know, realistically, what are we pushing? Like, what are we trying to do here when really you only need about 2 to 3 close-knit individuals as friends, and then you're good. So if your child is a loner and they have 1 or 2 friends, that's perfect. That's less personalities and social dynamics to think about. But that's creating more of a warmth feeling of a true, genuine friendship than if they have, you know, 50. But if your child is a social butterfly and they have 50 friends and they can navigate 50 different individuals and personalities, that's okay too. But really don't push something on a child because the next child is doing it. Really look at your child. I mean, if you were a loner, why would your child be, you know, this person that's outgoing and just doing this and is doing that? I mean, you know, personality also is part of genetics. So just be okay with where your child is at.
You really are giving them a gift when you can do that.
Yes, you are.
Talk about the importance of creating community other supportive parents who are sort of like-minded or safe places. Because I think for so many moms, you can get in these situations where you do feel like it's a comparison. And what are your kids' grades? And, does your kid have a boyfriend, girlfriend? It changes through the ages. Like it's one thing when they're babies and they're toddlers, elementary school, middle school, high school, the conversations change, but kind of at the heart of it sometimes is that same kind of comparison, wanting to see where you are in this process. And I think that we all need to have places where you've got some cool moms and dads you can talk to. You're like, look, I don't know. He's got a D in math. I don't know what we're going to do. And these you don't fear their judgment.
Absolutely. So you need a parental safe place. You need a safe community. And again, I'll reference, I have 2 kids that are considered atypical. My son's on the spectrum. My daughter has ADHD. And we have a small group of individuals that we call very close friends to us. And we met actually in our birthing class 11 years ago. And we just hit it off because we had similar interests, similar work, similar style. Our husband got along. So it was like the perfect blend. But when our children started to grow up, one thing we have never done is really brag about what our child is doing. We've never said, well, Jake, he's practically walking on his hands. That's how great he is athletically. I've never done that. They have never done that. And that's what's sustained a friendship. But instead we share our turmoils and our stress and our hardships, like the things that's making parenting these kids different. And, like one of my friend has a child who's incredibly anxious. And I have another friend who has another kid that also have ADHD. And something that we do share is, Abby, that's my daughter. She just woke up and sat on the bed. That's all she did. She's just sitting there. And my friend is like, oh my goodness, my child did the same thing. Like she's just sitting there. And I'm like, what should we do? I don't know what we should do. What should we do? What are we doing here? I don't know. We're both we both work with kids, just to let you know, like we know what to do and tell other people. But when it was happening within our home, it was like, are we just failing? I guess we're failing. But it was just this community that she and I created. I'm like, okay, I started this checklist for Abby. You do it with your child and you let me know. And it worked. But it was, yay, we're winning with the checklist. Yay, we're doing it. And she was like, I'm learning orthogalium OG style, how to do this type of learning. Do you want me to teach you? I'm like, yeah, I need to learn this because my child has dyslexia. So let's do this thing. And weirdly enough, both of our children have ADHD and they both have dyslexia. So it's this community of feeling like, okay, there's no judgment on you. There's no judgment on me. Sometimes we fail together and we laugh at it and we have a glass of wine and move on. And other times, even when we're winning, there's no mention of it. Like we're not talking about we're winning. We're just kind of like, hey, I'm having a parental failure. Can you help me out here? Can you move me here? But having that community, at least for me, has been so incredibly helpful. Where when I am having a down moment, I don't feel like, oh, she can't relate. Or this person, they don't know what I'm going through, so I can't reach out. I can't do this. And especially now with COVID and virtual parenting, where, I'm calling and I'm saying, okay, so we've been on iPads all day. I need a break today. Just kind of like, well, we've been on iPad too. Let's have them call each other,
Right. So you need some cool people
you
can say whatever the thing is that you want to say.
Exactly.
And they won't judge you. And they'll say, yeah, I get it.
You need a judgment-free zone.
Because if you don't have that, you end up feeling more alone and more of a failure as a parent. And that becomes more isolating. And that doesn't benefit you, your child, your family unit at all. And, I would even say this. I think it's okay to share the successes of your children.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're not suggesting that you don't say, oh my gosh, she got first place in the spelling bee.
Right.
By all means, say that and celebrate that. There's just a way, and you know what I'm talking about, because we all know it when we felt it from somebody who's doing that to kind of, I'd hate to say rub it in, but
I mean, it does. It feels that way, especially if that person has some level of insight into your personal struggle.
Yes. That's exactly what it is.
If they have an insight and they know you're going through something, if they know you're having a hard time, if they know something is going differently in your space, in your home, and they're like, oh, well, by the way, my child is da-da-da-da-da, then it feels like, wait, this is not okay because you know what I'm going through. It's not a good time for me. You should have more empathy and you should have a little bit more, awareness to say, I don't need to mention this. Now, it doesn't take away from your child's accomplishment.
Not at all.
It's just not necessary. Right now, you need to be a friend, not a competition.
Anything else you want to leave listeners with when it comes to, being a conscious parent and really being a good champion for your child?
I think for me, I would like to say, when you made that decision to become a parent, however that came, whether it's through adoption, biological, it doesn't matter. However you came into parenthood, you made that choice because you wanted to have a child, or maybe you didn't want to have a child, but now you do have a child and you're happy with this child. Their happiness is really the most important thing because statistically for, how they're going to be successful in life, their happiness, their self-esteem, their self-worth are really more of an indicator of how successful they are, as opposed to their aptitude of how smart they are, how many sports they played, how competitive they were, because those things do not lead to happiness. So when you have the child in front of you, parent the child in front of you, not the child that you want to have in front of you. Those are two different things. And B, fully accept the child that you have in front of you. They're a great, beautiful being. And I tell both of my kids, I think you both have beautiful souls. I love your souls and I love everything about you inside and out. But I do focus more on the internal things. I say, I love your beautiful soul. My daughter said, you can't see my soul. I'm like, I do. I see it. I see it through your eyeballs. I'm looking at it right now. But just reiterating that they're beautiful on the inside as well as out, and accomplishments don't make them greater. Accomplishments add to it. I mean, I'm an ex-athlete. I'm in academia. I did all those things, but really all I wanted to be seen was for who I was on the inside, not the things I did on the outside. So just really seeing your kid for who they are, accepting them for who they are, and having that conversation with them, and taking 10 to 15 minutes out of your day to connect with your kids, connect with who they are, what they're doing, what's going on, and I'm talking about 0 through 50, it doesn't matter. Just taking 10 to 15 minutes to show them they're of value, they're important, and you're willing to set that time aside to connect with who they are and not worry about who they could be or how they compare to someone else. So just take that time to connect.
So good, B. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Wake Up to Your Life podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, take a moment to subscribe for free on your favorite podcast platform. And while you're there, would you do me a favor and give this show a rating and leave a review? Doing so helps other people to find this show. You can follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram at Colleen_Odegaard. That's at Colleen_ODEGAARD. And if you're interested in learning more about my coaching programs, check out my website, wakeuptoyourlife.net. That's it for now. Talk to you soon.